Hi, I'm Connor Crank. Welcome to Hydrologic, the podcast of the Institute of Water Research at Michigan State University. In our first series, we're going to be exploring 4 areas of science affecting the world today. In our first interview with Dr. Morteza Mahmoudi, we are exploring the cutting-edge world of micro and nanoplastics, nanoscience, medicine, and environmental health. Today's guest is someone whose work sits at the cutting edge of nanoscience, medicine, and environmental health. This is Dr. Morteza Mahmoudi, and he is a researcher at Michigan State University, where he studies how tiny particles, like nanoparticles and microplastics, interact with biological systems. His research sheds light on how these particles behave in the body and in the environment, and how they might be affecting our health in ways that we are only just now beginning to understand. So, welcome, Dr. Mahmoudi. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're going to start off with a simple question. What are micro and nanoplastics, and how do they end up in the world around us?
So micro and nanoplastics are small fragments that result from larger, plastic items like bottles and, packaging. So plastics basically get exposed to different kind of mechanical stress, sunlight, heat, and other, kind of phenomena that gradually make them or fragment them into a smaller particle. And then those smaller particles can, move through air, through, water, soil, through food system, and that's why we basically have them all over around us. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, like you said, these particles are incredibly small, far too small to see with the naked eye. Why are they such a growing concern when it comes to both environmental and human health?
Yeah, actually they're very small size, as you mentioned, is the major point of concern. And the reason is that when we are dealing with so small size of the particles, they can get into the biological systems in a way that larger debris can't. So this means that they can enter our body through inhalation, ingestion, or even skin.
Scary.
And then, their surface chemistries are also important because they come from different sizes, different shapes, and then they can also bring some pollutants to our body or, biological entities like viruses and bacteria.
Okay.
They can carry them also inside the body. Again, the major problem of the size is that they can interfere with biological systems in a way that larger particles can't.
So that feeds into my next question. What happens when these particles do make their way into a living system, a person, an animal, or a plant?
Yeah, the major part that happens when any type of nanoscale item comes to contact with any type of biological fluids or living system is that they interact with, a wide range of proteins and biomolecules, and then they can interact with, cells, including immune cells. So, for example, in animals and in humans, they can interfere with, biological processes.
Are there diseases that we know of that are caused by
We are still learning because this is a very challenging topic. We know, from a wide range of research that nanoplastics and microplastics are in our gut system, in blood system, in bloodstream, in almost
Everywhere.
all of the organs that the human and animals has. And even in plants, they can affect, the root development and, other type of, biological processes that are involved in plants. So we are now at the stage that we are detecting those particles, and scientific progresses are emerging to better, understand how they can affect biological system from toxicology perspective,
Sure.
all the way to the effect that they can have on our brain and our, decision-making systems and even personality and behaviors.
Oh,
so we are
great.
learning a lot. We are still in our infancy in understanding
Absolutely.
those things.
I'm going off script a little bit here, but when did micro and nanoplastics really get discovered? When did research on this topic really begin?
So it was like, a couple of decades ago,
Okay.
where they were hugely detected in environment. And based on the discussion we had about the size, that when the size are, incredibly small,
Mhm.
then they can get into the water, they can get into the, air we inhale. So there was a hypothesis that there are lots of ways that they can get into the biological system.
Sure.
So that was the, tipping point of looking for nanoplastic and microplastic in human organs.
Absolutely.
And we have now lots of research, including a very recent one that has been published in Nature Medicine, showing that even human brain has a big chunk of micro and nanoplastic in them, which is a great concern.
Yeah, that's a great concern, absolutely. So one of the biggest challenges within the research community has been figuring out how to detect these particles, especially in water. You recently developed a sensor that uses color to identify these particles. Can you talk to us about how that works?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, getting information about the, amount of nanoplastic and microplastic pollution in environment is critical, because it's a first, understanding of the amount and, extent of the problems that we are dealing with.
Right.
The
And water's
problem,
key.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And the problem, as you mentioned, is that we lack, a wide range of strategies and methods that we can detect them. We can use microplastic, specifically when they are at the very low concentration. So the technology that we developed is a, kind of sensor that composed of materials and consists of novel materials that they can change their color when they come in contact with nanoplastic and microplastic in a measurable and persistent way. So we can basically, based on those color change and based on the degree, intensity, and amount of the color change, we can kind of identify what type of nanoplastic and microplastic we are encountering with in environment. And we can also define their concentration and even their sizes and shapes, so we can get a wide range of data that are useful for policy development and strategies that needs to be developed to remove them before they get into our body.
That's very interesting. Do different colors indicate different types?
Yes, because with the use of artificial systems and imaging, we can then identify, for example, which cluster of microplastic and nanoplastic cause specific changes in color.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Changing topics a little bit here, let's talk about something called the protein corona. What is it?
Yeah, I have been working in the field of protein corona in the past 2 decades.
Okay.
So the definition is, more general than the use of protein corona concept in micro and nanoplastic. It basically covers the entire nanomedicine and nanoparticle regime and spectrum. So the idea is that when a nanoscale object comes in contact with any type of biological fluids, its surfaces gets covered by a wide range of proteins and other type of biomolecules, but predominantly proteins. So this is super important because it gives a nanoscale object a biological identity. This is
That's
not
scary.
Yes, this is not what we had developed in the lab, or in terms of nanoplastic, this is not the surface that they had
It's almost
before.
like a virus.
It's basically defines how our immune system responds to nanoparticles.
Sure.
For example, if specific types of proteins comes in contact with the surface of nanoplastics, for example, they can define the biological fate of nanoplastics. So if the shape, the type, and the composition of nanoplastics basically are different from each other, they will have and form different protein coronas.
I would imagine there's a very wide range.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And you can add to the complexity that we have different sizes and composition of nanoplastics because the type of proteins depends on the size, shape, and composition.
Mm.
So each of those can basically define how our body respond to them. For example, if a specific type of proteins come to protein corona, then the particles can get the pass to get our brain system, which is well protected by a layer that is called blood-brain barrier.
Okay.
So if they earn biological identity that gives them a passport to pass BBB, which is blood-brain barrier, then they can target our brain tissue. So understanding protein corona on the surface of nanoplastics is super important in kind of predicting where they end up in our body.
I'm curious, has there been research on human subjects that have proven to have nanoplastics in their brain that have gone past that barrier?
Yes, exactly. As I've talked about that, the recent Nature Medicine paper on the
That's on real human subjects.
On a real human subject.
What
After
were some of
their
the
death,
results?
they basically sectioned their brains and could detect, a wide range of micro and nanoplastics.
But they don't know what the behavioral changes in the people.
They don't know. There are lots of neurotoxicology studies that are basically understanding how, accumulation of micro and nanoplastics in, living systems' brain can affect their behaviors. So we are at the beginning of, understanding that. But from hypothetical, perspective, we know that they can basically affect brain pathways in a way that it can affect, the behavior of the subject.
Do we know how those particles are entering the human body primarily? Is it through consumption or is it through absorption through the skin? Do we have any idea?
It's through a wide range of pathways that they can get into our body. Because we have those, microplastic and nanoplastic pollutions in
Everywhere.
air. Yeah, we can get them through inhalation. Or it's in the food system, unfortunately, through packaging, and the water, so we can get them through our digestive systems. And some of them are also in skin products, so they can also get in through our skin.